Hey there, welcome to this video, and in this particular video we are going to talk about yet another hook, which is the useEffect hook. So this is also one of the most commonly used hook. If you're reading any sort of React code, you're going to see this being used very often. So we are going to talk about these things here. Okay, we are going to first do a small introduction, understand what is useEffect hook, why is it needed. Understanding the need is really important. We'll talk about that first. Then there is a concept of dependency array in useEffect hook, and this is one of the major confusion points for beginners when learning React. So I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to show you different scenarios, and we are going to understand why you should use dependency arrays, and if you don't have dependency array, what would happen. If you have a value over there, what would happen. So different scenarios and different things we are going to take a look at over here, and we're going to understand the importance of this array that exists. We're going to talk about cleanup functions, okay, with useEffect hook. We're going to build two projects over here. So one is our own mouse tracker. Okay, it is going to show us the position of our mouse on the screen in real time, and we are going to make use of everything that we learned, and we are going to get a hands-on experience and use the knowledge into something that we are building. So this is a very simple project that we are going to build, and also we are going to build a digital clock wherein the data on the clock changes every second. Okay, because it is also going to have a second counter. So yeah, that's what we are going to cover. And yes, for easy learning or for easy navigation, I do have timestamps added in the description. So be sure to take a look and jump to any parts of the video if you wish to. So leverage the timestamp in the description. Goes without saying, this entire thing is without making use of any sort of slides. I have made sure like I am very hands-on when showing concepts to you all, when demonstrating things. So there is no use of slides, I should say, and everything is completely hands-on. All right. So that's about the video and useEffect hook that we are going to talk about. Now, this video is a part of a complete React playlist. Okay, so this is a complete React series that we are doing, and these are the videos that I've published so far. Of course, when you're watching this video, and by the time you are watching this video, this playlist is going to be updated with a lot more videos. So you can get the link to the playlist in the description below, or you can search React on my channel, and you will get access to this particular playlist. So be sure to leverage this playlist, and if you're new to this particular channel, be sure to watch the previous videos as well, okay, because they are going to help. But this particular video is pretty much standalone video. Okay, you just need to know all the previous concepts. So if you understand all these previous concepts, you can happily watch this video. Okay, because I've made sure like I've kept the videos independent so that they are not interlinked, and you can pick up learning from any video you want to. Okay, so that's something that you are going to see. Also goes without saying, if you are new and if you have not liked, subscribed to my channel, be sure to do that. Okay, it helps me bring more such free content on this platform. And in the comment section below, be sure to comment and let me know if you're following this course and what sort of videos I should bring on the channel next. All right. So without a further ado, let's jump right in. Hey there. So now it's time that we begin talking about the useEffect hook in React. Now, what is useEffect hook? Okay, so here I have a new React project with some commented code, which is going to help us understand this concept. And then we'll also do the practical to understand this even better. So to put it simply, useEffect hook in React lets you run some code automatically when something changes or when a component loads. Okay. Now, when I say component loads, it means that component renders for the first time or it mounts. Okay, right? So there might be several kinds of things that you want to do, or you might want to run, or you might want to do something when something changes in the application or when a component loads. Okay. So it's like setting a task to happen after the screen updates or when a certain kind of data is ready. Okay. Now, if you search online about useEffect, a common definition that you'll find is useEffect hook in React lets you perform side effects in functional components. Okay, you'll see this term side effects. Now what this means is it runs after the component renders, and it can be used for tasks like fetching data, updating the DOM, or setting up any sort of subscriptions if you want to. Okay, now these tasks that are important but they are not directly related to rendering, okay, they are known as side effects. Okay, and that is also what I'm talking about over here. useEffect hook in React lets you run code automatically when something changes or when a component loads. Okay, now after the component loads, you might want to fetch some sort of data from the API, right? Or you might want to fetch the data from the API when something changes into the application, right? For example, a state is updated, right? So you might want to fetch the new data from the server. So in that case, you can make use of useEffect hook, and this fetching of data is also known as side effect. Right, so it's basically a task that you need to do after your main task, right? So that's what useEffect hook is, to put it really simple. Okay, and here is the syntax over here. Okay, this is the syntax you can see. So I have useEffect, okay, and within this brackets. Okay, so one second, I'll just cut this over here. I'm making use of useEffect this way. Okay, I need to import this at the top whenever I'm using it. And if I paste it over here, I have this function inside. So this is a function, you can see this selected part, and this basically consists of the code that you want to run as the side effect, right? Or the action that you want to perform. Okay, and this is being passed as the arrow function, as you can see over here. Okay, now this code can be anything like making an API call, like I said, or updating any sort of subscription or any sort of thing that you want to do, right? And over here you have a array for dependency. Okay, now what this means is this is the dependency, okay, that basically is being watched. Okay, and whenever there is any change in this dependency, this code is executed. That is how it works. All right, so here if you see, the definition said useEffect hook in React lets you run some code automatically. Which is this code? It is this code that you mentioned over here, right? So this is that some code which it lets you run automatically when something changes or when a component loads. Okay, when something changes. So what is that over here? So that's the dependency that we are talking about. Okay, so when this dependency changes, if you have specified a dependency, of course, this is optional. If you have specified a dependency, then this code will run whenever there is any change in dependency. Okay, and here you can see these are different variations of useEffect hook in which it can be used. This is the first one. Okay, now over here there is no dependency array. Okay, you can see there is no dependency array. If I want to specify, I can specify the dependency array like this, but there's no dependency array over here. So without the dependency array or without specifying any sort of dependency, this would run on every render. So whenever there is any sort of rendering that is done, okay, this code that you specify within this arrow function would run. Okay, and this is another variation where you have a dependency array. Okay, you can specify comma separated values over here. Sorry, this is not the one with the dependency array. This is the one with the empty dependency array. Okay, so I have the third one with the dependency added. Okay, so what happens if you have an empty dependency array? So it runs only after the initial render. So when the component mounts or it renders for the first time, that is the only time when this would run. Okay, and this is a third variation that we have over here, wherein we have count. Okay, now count is the dependency based on which this code will be executed. So if there is any sort of update over here in the count, okay, this would be executed, right? That is what it means. Okay, and it runs on initial render as well, and when the count changes, that is what it means. Okay, so I hope this is pretty clear from the theory standpoint. All right, to put it simply, useEffect hook, okay, this is the simplest definition that I could have. In useEffect hook in React lets you run some code automatically when something changes or when a component would load. All right, so that's useEffect hook for you. Now, before using useEffect hook, what I'm going to do over here is scroll down. Okay, and over here, let us have an example without useEffect hook first. Okay, so here in this particular application, I just have this normal header that I'm returning, and you can see this output on the screen here, useEffect hook. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a count over here. Okay, and of course I'm going to make use of use state hook over here. Okay, and I'm going to say count over here, and I'm going to say set count, which is the setter, and I'm going to say use state over here, and I'll initialize it to 0. Okay, now what I'm going to do, the next thing over here is I'm going to have increment count. Okay, and over here I'm going to say this is an arrow function over here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is when this function is called, I'm going to update the count over here. Okay, so I'm going to say count plus 1, something like this. Okay, and I'm also going to update the title. Okay, so document dot title is equal to, and I'll have the template literals over here. I'll say count. So inside backticks I have count, and I'll say dollar, and I'll say count plus 1, something like this. Okay, we are not making use of this function yet. Okay, we need to make use of it. So here I'll come in, and over here I'm going to add a button. Okay, so this is a simple button. Okay, and what it does is it says increment over here. Okay, and here on the side it has on click, something like this, and I'll say increment count. I'll save this. Okay, so this is a button that I have. Okay, and you can see over here the title says wait plus react, right? So I can say increment, and it is updating the title, right? You can see the count is being updated, right? In the title you can see, right? So this is an example without useEffect hook. Okay, and every time the button is clicked, the increment function directly updates the document title. This works, but this is not ideal because it's hard to manage and maintain, especially when the app grows. This is without useEffect hook, right? Now we can transition this example into useEffect hook, and how would we do that? So what I would do is I would say I'll have this over here. Okay, and I'll scroll up. Okay, and over here I'm going to say useEffect. The moment I say useEffect like this, okay, and if I press enter, let us scroll up and see if the import has been added. So the import has been added, you can see over here at the top along with use state. And if you scroll down, useEffect, I need to make use of the syntax, so I can even copy it. So I want to use the one with the dependency, right? So I'll just take this one over here. Okay, and what I would do is over here I can have the code, okay, within this. So the side effect over here is this code, right? So I'll just cut this and I'll move it to this particular function over here. Okay, so I have the increment count separate, and this is a useEffect hook that is executed. Okay, oops, so this pop-up comes in. Okay, so this useEffect hook is executed, okay, when the count is updated. Any changes in the count will trigger this code to execute, right? And what is this code doing? This is updating the document title. Okay, what is the main task? Main task was just to update the count with this function, and after updating the count we have a useEffect hook which is making sure of running some additional code once the changes have been made to count. All right, I hope this is making sense. So I'll save this over here. Okay, and I'll refresh. Okay, now you can see here you're seeing count :1, right? We have not even clicked the button yet. It's saying count :1. All right, whereas in the previous example, so I'll just cut this, I'll just copy this. Okay, I'll just comment this out and I'll just go back to the previous example. So this is our previous example. In the previous example, when we did not press the button, we had wait plus react, which is the default title over here. We are not seeing count +1 over here because the title is set, of course, when the button is clicked, right? So when I click the button, it's updated to count 1, count 2, and so on, right? But in this case over here, okay, let me just do Control C. Okay, in this case over here, okay, so I'll have the count over here, not the count +1. Okay, so in this case over here, I see count 0, right? Why is this 0? And why am I seeing it updated in the title? Because if you see over here, it will run. So if you're making use of dependencies over here, it runs on initial render and when the count changes. Okay, so it's already running on initial render. Okay, but this was not the case. So this thing, when this was in the function and this was commented out, or this did not exist at that time, it was not running on the initial render. You can see it's not running on the initial render, and whenever you clicked, it showed the update over here, right? So yeah, that's the thing over here right now. So this explains that this runs on the first render, right? So if I save this f count 0, and I can increment this, okay, to as many times I want, and you'll see the update to title happening. And this is tied basically to count. And now any changes in the count will trigger this code over here. Okay, this code that I've written. Okay, this code will be triggered, right? And yeah, this is all because of the dependency array. So dependency array ensures that this is just triggered when the count is updated and not at any other times. All right. So I hope useEffect hook is pretty clear to you all as to what it is and how it works. So to put it simply, useEffect hook in React lets you run code automatically when something changes or when a component loads, right? It's like setting a task to happen after the screen updates or when a certain kind of data is ready, right? Now, what this means is when certain kind of data is ready, you might be performing some sort of processing, right? And you might be assigning that processed data to a state. So you can have a useEffect hook tied up to that state, and whenever the data is ready and it's assigned to that state variable, the useEffect is triggered, right? So that's what it means when you say when certain data is ready, right? And over here, you have these different variations of useEffect, and this is the syntax, the main syntax. All right. I hope this has been useful, and I hope you have been able to follow along. Hey there, welcome. And we're going to take a look at the importance of dependency array in the useEffect hook. All right. So let us take a look at this example. So here in this example, I have a very simple React.js project. And within the app.jsx, I have this app component wherein I'm simply returning a div with a header and a button click. Now what button click is doing is it is updating the state. Of course, we have a state called count over here with the help of useState. And we are making use of useEffect hook wherein if there is any change in the count, we are updating the document title. All right. So this is what the code is. It's pretty straightforward, and I'm rendering this component here in main.jsx, as you can see. All right. So what I would do is I will head over to app.jsx, and our goal is to understand the importance of the dependency array that we have. So this is a dependency array that we have. All right. Now the first thing, okay, what I would do is this dependency array is directly tied up to how the useEffect hook is executed, or how many times is it executed and when is it executed. So to track that, what I will do is I'll say console.log over here, okay, and I'll simply have a message over here. I'll say useEffect triggered, something like this. All right. And I can get rid of this if I don't want to update the title. Okay, I'll just stick to console log over here. Okay, I'll save this, and we can see the logs over here in inspect. Okay, so I'll go to inspect, I'll go to console, and you'll see useEffect has been triggered. All right, now if I refresh, you'll see, okay, it's being triggered twice over here. Okay, it should be ideally triggered once. Okay, now I'll tell you what's happening. So useEffect hook with a dependency array is triggered once when the component is mounted and when there is any change in the dependency array. Okay, so right now it is being triggered when the component is mounted. Okay, there's no change in the dependency array value over here. So we are not updating the count on refresh, right? So it's just being rendered for once only, but we are seeing console.log twice over here. Okay, and this is because we are in development mode. And when you are in development mode over here, we're actually running this React application in the strict mode over here, if you see. So if you go to main.jsx in the project, I'm actually running this in the strict mode. Okay. Now, if you don't want to see this twice, okay, what you can do is you can just get rid of this strict mode over here. Strict mode is although recommended when you are in development mode, because it checks for potential issues and any sort of unsafe code practices when you are in development. Okay, but we were seeing the message twice because the React was running in strict mode, and once I get rid of this, if I save this, you'll see I see it only once. Okay, so you can see useEffect hook is triggered once. All right, now what we can do is here we'll play around a bit with the useEffect. All right, now if I say increment, you'll see it's being triggered every time I'm clicking increment. And why is this happening? Okay, this is happening because this effect is tied up to count over here. Okay, and whenever there are any sort of changes in the count, whether it's increment, decrement, I'm making any sort of change in count, this code is going to trigger. All right, and that is what we are saying over here. All right, now what we can do is we will get rid of this. Okay, now what is going to happen? Okay, so I'll do a refresh and I'll clear the console. Okay, so I'll do a refresh. It's triggered for the first time when the component is mounted, of course. All right, now if I click increment, it is going to be triggered for every time. Okay, but now you'll see the output is same for having a dependency array and without a dependency array. So what's the difference? Okay, the difference over here is without a dependency array, it will be triggered on any sort of change or any sort of rendering on the component, right? Or any sort of re-rendering on the component. But with dependency array, it will be triggered only when count is updated. All right. So let me show this to you. Okay. And to demonstrate this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce one more state variable. I'm going to call this another value over here. Okay. And I'll say set another value like this. Okay. And I'll say use state over here, and this can be, let's say, or I'll just set this to 10. Okay, let's see what happens. All right, and here I'll come down. I'll duplicate this button over here at the bottom. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll call this another value, something like this. Okay, so we have one more button, but instead of updating the count, I'll update another value over here. All right. And I'll say another value plus 1, right? So this is done. All right, this is something that we are doing. All right, and now let us see the importance of dependency array. All right, I've saved this. Okay, let me refresh. So you can see useEffect hook is triggered, okay, when the component renders for the first time or the component mounts. Now if I say increment, it is going to trigger every time I click the increment. That's of course, right? But if I click another value, it is not going to trigger. Why? So the answer for this is because it's tied up to the value change in count state, right? And not in another value. And that's why it's not being triggered. Okay. Now, if I get rid of count over here, okay. Now, if I refresh, you'll see it being triggered once on component load. If I say increment, it is being triggered. If I say another value, it is being triggered again. Okay. You can see, so it's being rendered for any sort of change on the component, and this is because there's no dependency array, right? There's no dependency array. Okay. Now let us say if I add an empty dependency array. So let me add an empty dependency array. So what would happen? If I refresh, it gets triggered for the first time here. You can see. Now any sort of change, it won't be triggered because empty dependency array makes sure that the component is rendered, or the useEffect is triggered. UseEffect is triggered just for the first time when the component is mounted. Okay, so I hope you have some decent clarity. Okay, and I hope you can see how this dependency array makes a lot of difference. Okay, so if you are performing any sort of operation over here, that's a little bit heavy. Okay, I missed a semicolon here. I've just added that. So if you are performing any sort of operations that is a little bit heavy and time consuming over here within this useEffect hook, then this dependency array can decide the performance. Okay, so you have to make sure that you have to make sure that this useEffect hook is executed only at the right time when you actually need it to run. Okay, if for some reason you have a long task over here, let's say a high processing task, and if you miss the dependency array, then it's going to give you a really bad performance. Okay, but let's say if you have a variable, okay, that and you want to monitor the changes in that variable, and if you want to do this particular action only when there is the change in that particular variable, in that case, you should include or link this to that particular variable. Okay, and you should add that a variable, state variable, whatever it is, over here in the dependency array. And whenever there is any change, the useEffect hook will be triggered only then. Now, there will be some scenarios wherein you might want to do some sort of housekeeping when the component is loaded for the first time, right? So you can have useEffect hook in that case with an empty dependency array, because you want to do that housekeeping task just when the component is loaded and not after that. So you can have an empty dependency array over there. So it will be rendered like you saw. Right now we have an empty dependency array, so it will be rendered only, or it will be executed only once when the component is rendered and not after that. So I hope this example gives you a decent clarity of how useEffect hook works and how this dependency array that exists is important, right? So I hope you have clarity of different scenarios in how this is executed and managed, right? So if you have the dependency array mentioned, like any sort of value, then this function that you are specifying will be executed only when there is any change or update in this particular value, right? And of course, it will be executed on the first render as well, right? If you want it to be executed only on first render, you specify an empty dependency array, right? If you have something that you want to execute on any sort of change in the UI or any sort of rendering that happens, okay, you just skip the dependency array, okay? But remember that it will be triggered every time when there is re-rendering, all right? So keep the performance in mind, all right? I hope this has been useful, okay? And yeah, we disable the strict mode over here. You can just keep or stick to strict mode, okay? Because strict mode is recommended in development mode. So I just modified this because I didn't want to execute useEffect hook twice on the component rendering for the first time, right? So I had to remove that. But yeah, this is how things would work, and I hope this is clear to you all. Welcome to this particular video where we are going to build our own mouse tracker, and we are going to make use of useEffect hook for the same. Okay, so here on my screen, you can see this application where it's showing me the position of the mouse as I'm moving it. Okay, so it's completely real time, and we are making use of useEffect hook over here for this particular application. All right, so this will help us practice some React concepts, and it will help us get a project in our portfolio. All right, so it's a very simple project. All right, and let's jump right in. So here I am on VS Code, okay, Visual Studio Code, and I have my browser open side by side. I've created a very simple React project using Vite, and you can see I'm here in app.jsx, which is being rendered through main.jsx. All right, I have a CSS file too here with like very basic CSS. It's a standard CSS that I can call it. Okay, you have font family, you have text aligned to center, padding and margin set to 0. All right, oops, and padding top is 40 pixels and minimum height of this. All right, so what we are going to do is we are going to build our own mouse tracker. Now, first thing first, what we need is we need to have a state over here. Okay, so I'm going to call this state as mouse position. Okay, and this is going to help us track the position of the mouse. Okay, so this is going to have the latest position of the mouse, and it needs to be also updated whenever the mouse position changes. And I'm going to make use of use state over here. The moment I add use state, you'll see this import added at the top. All right, and this basically will hold the position in the form of key value pairs. So I'll have x colon 0. So this is the position of x, and this is the y position. Okay, so yeah, this is done. All right, now what we need to do is we need to change the interface. Okay, so we need to have a heading. So I'll say mouse position. Okay, and we'll display this mouse position over here. Okay, so I'm going to say p tag. Okay, and I'll say x colon, and I'll say mouse position dot x over here. Okay, and I have y position as well. Okay, I'll say y colon, and I'll display the y position as mouse position dot y, something like this. All right, so you can see the mouse position being displayed. It's currently 0, 0 because that's what we have initialized it to. All right. Now what we need to do is here, I'll make use of useEffect, and through useEffect over here, we'll have the listener and all managed. Okay. So here, useEffect. Okay. And within useEffect, I have this arrow function over here, something like this. And I have a dependency array. All right. This is what the hook will look like, right? When I added useEffect, make a note that this input was added at the top automatically. All right. Now over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this empty dependency array. Okay. And within this, I'm going to add a function. Okay. So I'm going to say handle mouse move over here. Okay. And it is going to accept event. And here I have a arrow function created. Okay. So this is what I'm creating, and here I'm going to say set mouse position. Okay. So this is updating the state. This is calling this. Okay. Set mouse position, and I'm going to say x colon event dot client x. Okay. And I'm going to say y colon event dot client y. Something like this. Okay. So yeah, this is done over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a listener to window. So I'm going to say window dot add event listener, something like this. And I'm going to add a mouse move listener. Okay. So I'm going to say mouse move, this one, because I want this to be triggered on any sort of mouse movement, right? So that I can track it real time, right? And I'll say handle mouse move. Okay, I hope this is making sense. So what we are doing is we are simply adding a listener to window. Okay, this is a window. We're adding a listener over there. We are saying mouse move listener. So it will track every mouse movement, and it will basically have this handle mouse move being executed. Okay, so I'll save this, and if you come over here, you can see it's working fine. You can see the position in real time, right? So yeah, this is the mouse tracker with the help of useEffect hook, and I hope you have some good clarity as to how you can make use of good useEffect hook to good practice. So now it's time that we talk a little bit more about the mouse tracker application that we built. So over here, we are attaching a event listener to the window. Okay. Now there is one small problem. Okay. There is no cleanup that we are doing, right? The event listener that we are adding remains active even when the component is unmounted. Okay. And this can lead to memory leaks and unnecessary performance overhead as the listener continues to run. Okay. So this is not good, and we should handle this with useEffect. So useEffect can allow us to include a cleanup function to remove the event listener when the component unmounts, and this ensures that the resources are released properly, and it prevents the potential memory leaks as well. Okay, so what is a cleanup function? Cleanup function is a sort of a function that is provided to us with useEffect where you can do cleanup. Okay, so you can do sorts of cleanup tasks like removing event listeners, or if you have any sort of timers running, and if the component unmounts, you can cancel those timers and all of these kind of stuff, right? And this keeps your app efficient and free from bugs. All right, how do we add an event listener? So over here, what I will do is after the listener is added over here, I'm going to say return. Okay, and I'm going to have an arrow function over here, something like this, like so. Okay, and over here I'm going to simply say, so I'm going to have the code to clean up within this cleanup function. So this is a cleanup function over here. I'm going to say window dot remove event listener. You can see what is the event listener we added. So it was mouse move. This was the event listener, and I have the listener as well. I have handle mouse move over here. Okay, so I get this removed, and here you can do a console log if you wish to. Okay, you can do a console log if you wish to, but right now we won't be seeing any sort of output because this is triggered when the component is unmounted, right? So what we would do is, instead of adding a console log over here, we will we will first trigger a manual unmount, right? Or we'll add a button which will enable us to mount and unmount the component so that we can see how this listener is working, right? So what I would do is I would move this entire code, in fact, okay, I'll move this entire code, in fact, to another component. And in this app component, I'll add a parent component. Okay, so we will have a parent component which will load this mouse tracker, and it will have a button to unload as well. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. So here, I'll create a new file. I'll say mouse tracker.jsx, something like this. And I'll paste this over here. And instead of exporting the app over here, I'll just say mouse tracker. Okay, this is a function, or this is a component name, right? So this is what the component name is right now. And here in app.jsx, what we need to do is we need to like get rid of this. We'll perform some sort of cleanup, and we'll just add the parent component over here. Okay, so I'll just get rid of all of this code over here. Okay, and yeah, this stays app, and we need to render the parent component over here. Okay, so we'll get rid of this. All right. Now here we are getting an error because there's nothing that we are rendering, but I'll just keep div for now so that we don't get any error. I'll introduce one more component called parent component. Okay, and I'll keep parent component separate. So I'll say parent component.jsx. Okay, so we have added two components here. All right, and what I would do is I would say function. Okay, function parent component. Okay, something like this. And I'll add an export over here. Okay, I'll say export default parent component, like so. Okay, and over here I'll add a state. So what we will do is we'll maintain a state whether you want to show a component or not. Okay, so I'll say show component, and I'll say set show component, something like this. Okay, and I'll add use state hook over here. Okay, now use state is true. So by default we are showing this is boolean. Okay, this the state has a value of boolean. Okay, and I can have constant toggle component. Okay, and I'll have an arrow function over here, something like this. And within this I can say set show component, and here I'll say the previous value. Okay, so just reverse the previous value. That is what we are saying over here. Okay, so yeah, this is done, and what I need to do now is I need to return over here. So I'll say return, and I'll add a return statement. Okay, something like this. Within this I'll have a div like so. Okay, and I'll have a button. Okay, now what does this button do? So button will on click. Okay, on click it'll toggle component like so. Okay, and over here I can make use of ternary operator. So if show component is true, okay, then what do? We have this value of unmount tracker. Okay, like the text is shown as unmount tracker. Okay, so I'll say unmount tracker, and if the value is false, then we'll say mount tracker. So this text also toggles, right? Basically, that is what it means. Okay, so I have this button done. Okay, and now what I can do is I'll have this JavaScript over here. If it's show component, okay, then what we need to do is we will render mouse tracker, something like this. Okay, like so. Okay, so we are conditionally rendering mouse tracker over here. Okay, what is happening is we are saying show component. If show component is true, okay, then we are saying render mouse tracker, right? So this is done, and over here we need to, like, instead of div, I'll add parent component like so. Okay, like so, and you can see the app is over here, right? So you can see this is coming in. I can render and unrender. You can see. Okay, I can mount and I can unmount. So the component is being mounted and unmounted. Okay, how's this working? Okay, we just did a little bit of refactoring. We added a parent component. Okay, first we created two files. One is two files, or I should say two components in separate files. So this is parent component. okay, we have mouse tracker component. So mouse tracker component is straightforward. Okay, we just have this mouse tracker with useEffect hook, and it is showing us the position of the mouse, right? And we have added a cleanup function over here. Then we have a parent component which has this show component state, which is Boolean, and there is a button which toggles this component value, this show component value, to true or false, right? And then we are rendering show component this way. Okay, so this is taken care of, and then in the app.jsx we are showcasing the parent component only. Okay, because within parent component we are actually rendering mouse tracker component, and that is conditional rendering with the help of AND operator. All right, so this is done, and now what we can do is we need to see how this function is working, right? So what I'm going to do is we need to add, I would say we need to add the console.log over here. Okay, and we need to track how the listener is being added and how it's being removed. So here I'll say log. Okay, and here we can say mouse move listener added, something like this. Okay, I'll remove this. Okay, I'll copy this, and here in the return statement, okay, inside return function, I'll say mouse move listener removed. Okay, something like this. Okay, now let us see the console. Okay, so I'll come over here. I'll come to console. Okay, you can see. Okay, first thing I'll do a refresh over here. Okay, refresh, and you can see mouse move tracker added. Mouse move tracker added. I'm like moving my mouse over here, and you have mouse move tracker added. Okay, sorry, mouse move listener added. And now if I unmount, okay, you'll see mouse move listener is removed. Okay, this won't be the case if you don't have this cleanup function. So if you don't have this cleanup function, the listener is never removed. Okay, that is what the problem is. So if you refresh, you can see the listener is added. You can see mouse move listener is added, right? If I unmount the tracker or unmount the listener, unmount the component, I should say, you can see there's no listener that is being removed. Okay, so the listener is still there, and this can lead to side effects or any sort of bugs. Okay, because you have a listener out there, right, that is not being used. Okay, so you can see and imagine how this is working fine. Okay, so mounting, unmounting, you can see it's being added and removed, right? So this is what a cleanup function is. Okay, I hope this is giving you a sense of how important this is. The goal of this cleanup function is, of course, like the name says, it's used to clean up, right? So any sort of cleanup task that you want to do, you can do it this way. Okay, this is the syntax over here. Okay, within these curly braces, you can have all sorts of cleanup tasks, and you can see how this is being triggered on the component unmount over here. All right. So I hope this is useful, and I hope you have been able to follow along, and I hope you now have a good grasp of how you can make use of useEffect hook. Hey there. So in this particular video, we are going to build this digital clock that you're seeing on the screen. So it's a very simple digital clock. Okay, we are going to, that is going to display the time over here. And you can see how it's updating the UI. You can see there is seconds, minutes, hours, and the entire time is being displayed, right? Basically. So this is what we are going to build, and we are going to make use of React concepts and go hands-on with them. Okay, so this is a practice project that can help you reinforce the learning that you have with React so far. All right, so yeah, without further ado, let's jump right into Visual Studio Code. All right, so to begin with, I have a very simple React.js project set up over here. Okay, I am making use of Vite over here, and this is a React.js project that I have. I have app.jsx, which is being rendered in main.jsx. All right. And within app.jsx, I have this couple of imports at the top, a very basic component definition. All right. And I'm exporting this component, of course. And within app.css, I have very basic styling that you see over here, just to this is not much, okay, but a pretty simple styling I have in place. So we are going to build this digital clock from scratch. All right. Now, first thing first, what I'm going to do is I have this div, all right, and I need to update the UI over here, of course. But before updating the UI, we need to have time, and we need to store time in the form of state, right? So I'll say const, I'll say time. Oops, I missed this. So I'll say time over here, and I'll say set time. Now, of course, here I'll say use state, okay, and I'll initialize this to new date, okay, something like this, okay. So whatever new date returns, that is what it's initialized with. All right. Now this is done. Okay. Now over here, I'm going to make use of useEffect over here. Now inside the useEffect hook, what we are going to do is we need to update this time every second. All right. And basically that is what we would be doing, because this needs to have the current time, right? And time changes every second. So we need to update this state variable every second. Okay. We're going to have cleanups as well. So let us do it. So we'll say useEffect over here. Okay. I'll have an arrow function. Okay. Something like this. Okay. This is arrow function. And over here, I'll have a dependency array. Okay. So yeah, this is done. And what we need to do is here I'll add some code. So here I'll say const timer ID. Okay, so I'm getting a timer ID, or let us add this later. Okay, so what we will do first is we'll say set interval. Okay, so I'm making use of set interval over here. Okay, now within set interval I am going to have so I don't want this arrow function. Okay, I don't want this arrow function. I'm going to say set time here. Okay, set time. And so I have arrow function. In fact, I said I don't want arrow function. I have arrow function, but I just removed the curly braces, right? So that it looks a little bit cleaner. Okay, I can have the code written over here as well. Okay, so I can say set time over here. So I'm updating the state using set time. I'm saying new date. Okay, something like this. And I can actually add 1000 over here. Okay, so here I can say 1000, something like this. Okay, oops, I missed a round bracket, I guess. Set time, new date, something like this. Okay, or 1 second. Okay, so this won't come over here. This is the interval. Okay, so this is the interval. It will come over here. All right, so this is done. Okay. So this is what it is. Now, let me explain what I just did. Okay, just in case you're wondering what happened. Okay, so here I made use of set interval function. Now, what is set interval? I'll just type in set interval again. Set interval basically is a JavaScript function. Okay, it's a function basically which will execute the code block inside it repeatedly after a set time interval. Okay. And what is the interval that we are setting? So you can set any sort of interval over here, which will be in milliseconds. So if I enter 1000 over here, it means that 1 second. Okay. So what are we willing to do? What is the goal over here? We want to update time every second, right? We want to update time every second, right? This time should update every second, because time changes every second and I'm building a dynamic clock, right? So I'm making use of set interval over here, set interval function. You can see if I hover on this, probably I'm getting the documentation. Schedules repeated execution of callback every delay milliseconds, right? So this is the callback that we have. Okay, I can simplify this into single line. I can get rid of the curly braces because there is only one line of code, right? So I'll just get rid of this. Okay, this is pretty simple. Okay, so I hope this is pretty clear as to what is happening. Set interval. All right, and then what we are doing is we need to inside set interval. Okay, we are updating set time over here. Okay, and we are doing this every 1000 milliseconds. Okay, then what we need to do is we need to get the timer ID over here, because we will be adding a cleanup function as well. So I'll say const timer ID, something like this. Okay, so this is the ID of the timer that we have. Okay, and then I'll have a cleanup function like so. Okay, I'll add an arrow function and I'll say clear interval. Oops, I'll say clear interval, okay, and I'll say timer ID. So I'm clearing the interval. Basically, this is a cleanup that I'm doing. All right. So this is the code to update the time basically every second. That is what we have written over here. Okay. This is what it does. Now over here, what we can do is here, if you come here, we can display the time. Let us see what we see as the output. Okay. The output won't be good. It won't be in user friendly way, but I still want to show this to you. So if I save this, oops, so there's literally no output here. So it's not displaying anything because we are trying to display date over here and we are getting an error. Okay. So you need to convert this date into a string. So I'll say we have a function over here to local time string. Okay. And I can save this and you can see the time being displayed over here. Right. So this is updating every second. Right. Now what we need to do is we need to format this. All right. So this is, I would say this is okay, but I need to have a better control on the sort of formatting that I wish to have for my application, right? So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to have a function. I'm going to say formatted time, and here, so this is actually this is doing a job. Okay, it's not a function, but it's doing a job of formatting the time to the right format. Okay, so we can do it without function. So I'll say time dot to local, okay, to local time string over here. Okay, and we can pass in the locale as well as the format. Okay, so I'll pass in the locale as enus. Okay, and here I'll specify the formatting. All right, so here I can say r, okay, colon, I'll say 2 digit, something like this. Okay, we can follow this format. Okay, so r colon 2 digit over here. So this format needs to go in a pair of curly braces. All right, so that's something I missed over here. Okay, r 2 digit, I'll come over here. This is minute 2 digit, something like this, and this will be seconds 2 digit. Okay, oops, something like this. And if you, the moment you save it, okay, you won't see any changes because we are displaying time. You need to display formatted time. So you need to come over here and get rid of this entire thing, and you can display the formatted time. Okay, oops, so the second is not being displayed because we missed, we should add a comma here probably. And let me see. Okay, so it's second and not seconds. Okay, just a S made the difference, right? So you can see now it's in the format 08. So earlier it was not 08, it was 80906 PM. So I'm having now a better control on the formatting, right? So yeah, this is how the application is running. Okay, and I'll just give you a gist of what's happening over here. Okay, so first, how this application is working, we have a component. At the top, we are creating a state that is maintaining the initial state of the time to current date and time. Okay, using this new date. Okay, and we have this time state and set time function to update the state whenever it changes. We have useEffect hook over here. Okay, and within useEffect hook, so useEffect hook essentially runs the code inside it after the component is rendered. Okay, and in this case, it is responsible for starting the timer that updates the clock every second. Okay, so we have an empty dependency here, remember, and it's running immediately after the component is rendered. Okay, now what is happening over here is we are making use of set interval function. Okay, now what does set interval does? Set interval is a function that allows us to run some code repeatedly after a set time interval. Okay, and here the time interval we have set is 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. Okay, and we have a cleanup function which is clearing the interval using the timer ID, which we have, and we are formatting the date. We are formatting the time to our own desired format, and I'm displaying the formatted time. So what is happening is every time the component is re-rendered. Okay, so every time set time function is updated over here, the state is updated, the component is re-rendered. Okay, and every time this set time is called, time is updated, and whenever time is called, formatted time is updated, and whenever formatted time is updated, you're seeing the updated value over here. Okay, so that is how this entire thing works whenever the time state changes, the component re-renders and the newly formatted time is being displayed. Okay, and this recurring thing is being set by the set interval function, because that is what that function itself updates the time state every second. Okay, and whenever the time state changes, the component is re-rendered and formatted time is displayed, and the process repeats, so the time is updated constantly in real time. All right, so I hope this is good, and now we need to do a little bit of like beautification, I would say, over here, right? So what we can do is we can improve the CSS. So I can get rid of this welcome at the top. Okay, and I can add a div. I'll call it class name and I'll call it clock container. So this is exclusively for styling over here. Okay, I can add one more div over here. I can say div. Okay, and I can move this div, this inside over here. Okay, something like this. Okay, and over here inside clock container, I'll say class name as clock, something like this. Okay, now we need to add some CSS. So I'll switch over to app.css. I have some basic CSS over here. Okay, which I'll get rid of. Okay, I'll get rid of, and I'll say clock container, something like this, and I'll say display of flex over here. Okay, justify content as center. Okay, and align items as center. Okay, I can set height. Okay, and we'll have background color. Okay, so background color, I have a color code for this. Okay, so I'll say hash and 282C34. Okay, you can have a color of your choice. Okay, now after updating the color, the clock is barely visible. That's absolutely okay. All right, we'll update the clock as well. So I'll say clock over here. Okay, I'll set some font size over here. Okay, so font size of 4 rem. Okay, and yeah, clock is bigger now. Okay, family, font family of I'll add a family over here. This can be the one, and I'll say color. Okay, so we can have a color, and for that I have a color code. So I'll say 61 TAFP. Okay, you can add the color of your choice. That's absolutely okay. And background color, I'll set the background color to hash. Oops, so this is hash 2023 2A. Okay, something like this. So totally up to you as to how you want to manage it. Okay, and I'll set the padding over here. Padding of 20 pixels and 40 pixels. Okay, something like this. Okay, so I'll zoom out a bit so that this looks okay. I'm ultra zoomed in. Okay, so this is looking cool. There are like white borders beside, so what I will do is I'll get rid of those white borders. So I'll have star over here, margin of so margin of 0 pixels, like so, and you can see the white borders are gone. Okay, so this is done. Padding, I can add a border radius. Okay, border radius of let's say 10 pixels. Okay, and yeah, this is it. I believe this is it, right? So this is our clock in the full screen mode, as you can see over here. Okay, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you got to learn a lot. Okay, I hope this was useful, and see you next time.